Lamentations, anonymous work of the Book of Lamentations, Eka, attributed to Jeremiah mainly because of its subject. The fall of Jerusalem carries something of the prophetic spirit, but is essentially a highly artificial literary product in the form of an elaborate dirge adapted for professional mourners. Some prophets did teach funeral prayers. In the original, the poem is an acrostic, each line beginning with a different letter of the alphabet, and the lines are arranged in regular triplets or couplets, the whole carefully divided to form a series of dirges within a dirge. Unfortunately, little idea of this complicated structure is conveyed by the King James translation. The only King James thing where it sounds better is the Book of Revelations. Everything else sounds worse. On the other hand, the sincerity of the mournful emotions aroused by the most tragic event in Jewish history is extremely well conveyed. The poem is a good illustration of the truth to which such modern forms as the sonnet bear witness, that strictness of pattern is not necessarily any impediment to the expression of emotional sincerity. Lamentations. 1. How doth the city sit solitary, that was full of people? How is she become as a window, she that was great among the nations, and princes among provinces? How is she become tributary? She weepeth sore in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers she hath none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies. Yehuda is gone into captivity because of affiliation, because of affliction. Well, affiliation too, right? And because of great servitude. She dwelleth among those who turn their back on God. She findeth no rest. All her persecutors overtook her between the straits. The ways of Zion do mourn because none come to the solemn feasts. All her gates are desolate, her priests sigh, her virgins are afflicted, and she is in bitterness. Her adversaries are the chief, her enemies prosper. For God as a noun and verb hath afflicted her for the multitude of her transgressions. Her children are gone into captivity before the enemy, and from the daughter of Zion all her beauty is departed. Her princes are become like harts that find no pasture. Hearts is in, the deer. And they are gone without strength before the pursuer. Jerusalem remembered in the days of her affliction and of her miseries, with all her pleasant things that she had in the days of old, when her people fell into the hand of the enemy, and none did help her. The adversaries saw her and did mock her at her Sabbaths. Jerusalem hath grievously sinned, therefore she is removed. All that honored her despise her, because they have seen her nakedness. Well, they were probably entertained too, right? Yea, she sigheth and turneth backwards. Her filthiness is in her skirts. She remembereth not her last end, therefore she came down wonderfully. She had no comforter. God as noun and verb. Behold my affliction, for the enemy hath magnified himself. Now, if it's by force or oppression, uncovering someone's nakedness is even worse of a sin than we've seen. Is it Jeremiah or Hosea or something that talks about? That's one of the two. That's one thing that you do not do to anyone. Yet she sigheth and turneth backward. Her filthiness is in her skirts. She remembereth not her last end. Therefore she came down wonderfully. She had no comforter. God is noun and verb. Behold my affliction, for the enemy hath magnified himself. Well, I mean, this metaphorical speech. It's not necessarily. Not all armies rape the captives. The true Chaldeans wouldn't have. The adversary hath spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things, for she hath seen that those who turned their back on God entered into her sanctuary, whom thou didst command that they should not enter into thy congregation. All her people sigh, they seek bread, they have given their pleasant things for meat to relieve the soul. See, God is noun and verb, and consider, for I am become bile. Is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by? Behold, and see if there be any sorrow like unto my sorrow, which is done unto me. Wherefore with God is noun and verb hath afflicted me in the day of his fierce anger. From above hath he sent fire into my bones, and it prevaileth against them. He hath spread a net for my feet, he hath turned me back, he hath made me desolate and faint all the day. The yoke of my transgressions is bound by his hand. They are wreathed and come upon my neck. He hath made my strength to fall. God as noun and verb hath delivered me into their hands, from whom I am not able to rise up. God as noun and verb hath trodden under foot all my mighty men in the midst of me. He hath called an assembly against me to crush my young men. God as noun and verb hath trodden the virgin, the daughter of Yehuda, as in a winepress. Now, was it that the supposed to be chaste? Perhaps. But again, virgin is a symbol, For these I weep, mine eye runneth down with water, because the comforter that should relieve my soul is far from me. My children are desolate, because the enemy prevailed. Zion spreadeth forth her hands, and there is none to comfort her. God as noun and verb hath commanded concerning Jacob, that his adversaries should be round about him. Jerusalem is as a menstruous woman among them. See, it's not even about that. Zion's not even about that city, right? But they needed to learn that, to detach themselves from the land and the city. God as noun and verb is righteous, for I have rebelled against his commandments. Hear, I pray you, all people, and behold my sorrow. My virgins and my young men are gone into captivity. I called for my lovers, but they deceived me. My priest and mine elders gave up the ghost in the city, while they sought their meat to relieve their souls. Behold, God is noun and verb, for I am in distress. My bowels are troubled, mine heart is turned within me, for I have grievously rebelled abroad. The sword bereaveth. At home there is as death. They have heard that I sigh, there is none to comfort me. All mine enemies have heard of my trouble, they are glad that thou hast done it. Thou wilt bring the day that thou hast called, and they shall be like unto me. Let all their wickedness come before thee, and do unto them as thou hast done unto me for all my transgressions. For my sighs are many, and my heart is faint. 2. How hath God as noun and verb covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger? Well, there's a difference between the child of the bride of God and the bride of God themselves. A cloud in his anger, and cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Yisrael, and remembered not his footstool in the day of his anger. God as a noun and verb hath swallowed up all the inhabitants of Jacob, and hath not pitied. He hath thrown down in his wrath the strongholds of the daughter of Yehuda. He hath brought them down to the ground. He hath polluted the kingdom and the princes thereof. He hath cut off in his fierce anger all the horn of Yisrael. He hath drawn back his right hand from before the enemy, and he burned against Jacob like a flaming fire which devoureth round about. He hath bent his bow like an enemy. He stood with his right hand as an adversary, and slew all that were pleasant to the eye in the tabernacle of the daughter of Zion. He poured out his fury like fire. God as noun and verb was as an enemy. He hath swallowed up Yisrael. He hath swallowed up all her palaces. He hath destroyed his strongholds, and hath increased the daughter of Yehuda. Mourning and lamentation. He hath violently taken away his tabernacle as if it were of a garden. He hath destroyed his places of assembly. But his noun and verb hath caused the solemn feasts and Sabbaths to be forgotten in Sion. Observances are a means, but aren't people to maintain the calendars and houses of worship and stuff like that? You know, if the people don't maintain them, what are, you know, you can't expect God to. And hath despised in the indignation of his anger the king and the priest. Is it the access controlling priest, the Kahin? Is that the word being used? God as noun and verb hath cast off his altar and hath abhorred his sanctuary. He hath given up into the hand of the enemy the walls of her palaces. They have made a noise in the house of God as noun and verb, as in the day of a solemn feast. God as a noun and verb hath purposed to destroy the wall of the daughter of Sion. He hath stretched out a line. He hath not withdrawn his hand from destroying. Therefore he made the rampart and the wall to lament. They languished together. Her gates are sunk into the ground. He hath destroyed and broken her bars. Her king and her princes are among the Gentiles. Those who turn their back on God. The law is no more. Her prophets also find no vision from God as noun and verb. The elders of the daughters of Sion sit upon the ground and keep silence. Yeah, the prophets, the exemplar prophets, the messenger prophets of God. They received messages to guide more than themselves. I mean, there's people with spiritual experiences that confirm things for themselves, but the elders of the daughters of Sion sit upon the ground and keep silence. They have cast up dust upon their heads. They have girded themselves with sackcloth. The virgins of Jerusalem hang down their heads to the ground. Mine eyes do fail with tears. My bowels are troubled. My liver is poured upon the earth for the destruction of the daughter of my people, because the children and the sucklings swoon in the streets of the city. They say to their mothers, where is corn and wine? When they swooned as the wounded in the streets of the city, when their soul was poured out into their mother's bosom. What thing shall I take to witness for thee? What thing shall I liken to thee, O daughter of Jerusalem? What shall I equal to thee, that I may comfort thee, O virgin daughter of Sion? For thy breach is great like the sea. Who can heal thee? Thy prophets have seen vain and foolish things for thee. You know, there's different types of prophets. Some of them are sectarian. Some of them are even of demons. And they have not discovered thine iniquity to turn away thy captivity, but have seen for thee false burdens and causes of banishment. All that pass by clap their hands at thee. They hiss and wag their head at the daughter of Jerusalem, saying, is this the city that men call the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? All thine enemies have opened their mouth against thee. They hiss and gnash the teeth. They say, we have swallowed her up. Certainly this is the day that we looked for. We have found, we have seen it. God as noun and verb hath done that which he had devised. He hath fulfilled his word that he had commanded in the days of old. He hath thrown down and hath not pitied. He hath caused thine enemy to rejoice over thee. He hath not set up the horn of thine adversaries. Yeah, when it comes to justice, it's not, oh, I can't give this person this punishment, they'll whine too much. It's like, no. Their heart cried unto God as noun and verb. O wall of the daughter of Sion, let the tears run down like a river day and night. Give thyself no rest. Let not the apple of thine eye cease. Arise, cry out. in the night, in the beginning of the watches, pour out thine heart like water before the face of God as noun and verb. Lift up thy hands towards him for the life of thy young children that faint for hunger in the top of every street. Behold, God is noun and verb, and consider to whom thou hast done this. Shall the women eat their fruit, and children of a span long? Shall the priest and the prophet be slain in the sanctuary of God as noun and verb? The young and the old lie on the ground in the streets. My virgins and my young men are fallen by the sword. Thou hast slain them in the day of thine anger. Thou hast killed and not pitied. Thou hast called as in a solemn day my terrors round about, so that in the days of God as noun and verbs anger not escape nor remain. Those that I have swaddled and brought up hath mine enemy consumed. And number 3 is where we're going to start next time.